Just do it as good as you can and do it better the next time. 'Cause if you're waiting on that someday, you'll be waiting the rest of your life.
Hi, welcome to Swishing Mindsets. I'm Anuradha, and today I'm speaking to Maxwell Ivey, better known as the Blind Blogger, a serial online entrepreneur from the US. He is an accessibility expert advocating for more inclusion of people with disabilities. Hi, Maxwell. How are you? Great to have you here.
I'm doing fine. It's good to be here, and I hope you're doing good today as well.
I am. I'm very happy to be talking to you. So, you call yourself the blind blogger. I was reading about you and checked your Instagram, etc. And you said that a lot of people try to mask their disabilities online because they're not sure of how people will react to them, especially when it comes to work, etc. But you decided to be upfront about it. So, could you tell us a little about that? How you came to
Right.
call yourself the blind blogger?
Sure. So I did not actually choose the name The Blind Blogger on my own. I had been promoting the work I was doing online on Facebook and LinkedIn at that time. And as a form of shorthand, some of the people in the communities I was part of started calling me the Blind Blogger because I was the only blind person they knew who was also a blogger. And it's actually pretty common if you have a disability that you're going to be the only one, if not one of a very small number of people that somebody may know that has a disability or is differently able. So I just naturally became the blind blogger, like the singer on American Idol became Blind Joe, and when I finally accepted that I wanted to talk more about being an entrepreneur who is blind, and I asked people what I should call myself. They said, "Well, we've been calling you the blind blogger for a couple of years now. So what else would you be?" And I thought nothing of it. But once I filed for the domain name and announced that I was going to do that, there was a lot of objection to my choosing the name. People who I knew who were sighted thought that I was too talented, too good a storyteller. I didn't need to lean into my vision loss to be successful online. And many people who were visually impaired were upset that I was playing the quote blind card unquote. And so there were some people that I lost as friends or as online acquaintances because of becoming the blind blogger. And it wasn't until recently that I realized just how powerful a decision that was, even though I didn't know it at the time. At the time, it was just a cool name, a name people had been using for me, and I took it and did the work. But looking back now, I can see that the reason I was the blind blogger is so few people with disabilities were open about their disability online. If we go back 8, 10, 12 years ago, and the idea was is that since disclosing a disability in in-person interviews for looking for work was often a problem, that disclosing disability online might prevent you from being a success in this new arena. So most people just decided to hide in out of fear of what that they might be rejected or thought less of because of it. I figured that if nobody heard about who I was or what I was doing, that they wouldn't hire me or buy from me. So I couldn't see anything other to do than be who I was. So over time, it's been cool to see how now there's a real openness, and you can't go anywhere on social media and not run across people who have an emoticon or a sticker in their profile or their posts that reference a disability, whether that's a physical or a neurological or a developmental disability. It's all out there, and I feel like I was part of that, whether I knew it at the time or not.
Yes, you were ahead of your time, one might say, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, from people saying that you're using the blind card, uh, and, you said that it's turned out to be quite powerful for you, right? or stating it up
Yes.
front. So tell me about your experience with losing your sight. What I read is that, you were 10 years old when you lost your sight. So
Right.
how
I
many
started
years,
losing,
yeah, how many
yes, well,
years has it been? Yeah.
yeah, so I just turned 59 in April. So I started losing my vision gradually when I was 5 or 6 years old, but I had a big drop off in vision when I entered junior high school. So about 11 or 12 years old, I went from, say, using thick glasses to being determined legally blind and starting to learn to use a white cane, starting to learn to read Braille, and depending on audio and Braille for most of my reading material. So that would have been about, and my vision stayed constant until I went off to college. But by the time I graduated from college, it was down to what it is now, which is light perception. And I can see bright light if I look directly at the source where the light is supposed to be coming from, but I can't tell shapes, shadows, or colors, just that light is either there or not there.
So how has the transition been for you? And even emotionally, I mean, I can see that, you've been talking about determined positivity and things like that, but I'm sure it didn't come naturally or easily, rather, in the beginning. How has it been for you?
Well,
Maybe it might inspire others, on that journey.
right, right. Well, I think part of it comes from the fact that at least in the beginning it was gradual and it was not a surprise, although with something like losing your vision, even knowing it's coming can still be very frustrating. But I'm part of a large family that were my grandfather and grandmother had 6 kids. So and we all lived on the same piece of property together. So there were lots of us. We went to school together. And so the other thing is, having solid family members, teachers, um, also later becoming involved in scouting, that helped too. But I also think growing up in a family of people that operated carnival rides, you learn from an early age that you're never going to have all the resources, time, or money that you want. You learn from very early that you're going to have to overcome setbacks and adversity. So it kind of gets baked into your DNA as you're growing up. So I feel like the whole idea of you just have to find a way to get to next week, just find a way to get open this week. uh that really helps you with have a positive mindset. And then some of these other things have built upon that over my lifetime, because after college I spent over 15 years working in the family business, and since then I've spent getting close to 20 years now working online. And there have been many days where working online was much more challenging than setting up and taking down carnival rides, especially when you have to depend on a screen reader and on the internet, where things change rapidly from day to day. And what was best practices last week is not best practices today. And a lot of the people who are developing the websites and apps that I depend on, even now, still don't really appreciate how much they affect my lives when they make even the smallest changes in a website or an app that I use on a regular basis. So it's as far as positivity and finding solutions, the finding solutions comes from the traveling business and also from online, because I've had to back when I first started, accessibility was so non-existent. I had to teach myself to code HTML, which is not something anybody should want to do or have to do, but I had to. But it was, out of a desire to find a solution that was the only solution available. I did a lot of things in the carnival business that were distasteful, got greasy and dirty, and spent nights on sides of roads and things, did because we had to do them. And I feel like that, is really built into what I'm doing, what I've been continuing to do. And as I tell people all the day, most people that know something about resilience know it because they've been through stuff and they've had to pick themselves up off the ground numerous times to the point where they get pretty good at it. For me, one of the things people talk about is the many different things I've done, even in my online career, selling used rides, coaching, podcasting, speaking, traveling. And, uh, you know, the thing is I just continue to keep moving forward, looking to find the thing that I'm really good at, that people want to pay me for, that I can make a sustainable living at, and just continuing to move forward is one of those things that I do because I've done it. I have, and most people that are listening to us, they've done things in their lives that are very challenging, and they may or may not have been successful. But if they'll think about it and think about it from a positive mindset, find a time in their day when they're feeling pretty good about themselves. If they look back through the challenges they've had, they'll find that they learned things, that they overcame things, that they're stronger than they think they are some of the time. But we don't always take the time to sit down and make a list of the things we've accomplished or survived in some cases. But people who have, even now, that are trying to do new things while they continue to go to work. They discount caring for family members, caring for pets, education, uh, unrealistic expectations from their bosses, transportation to and from work, shopping, cleaning. So many things uh, that make it hard to try to do something new. But we can all look back in times of our lives where we've been through more challenging things and take strength from those, and also take ideas from those. So yeah, I'm pretty good at overcoming adversity and finding the positive things, but I've been doing it a long time. And at this point, I have systems in place to remind myself to keep doing the things that have kept me healthy, going on now online for almost 20 years.
Yeah, and I can see that you're doing a lot online. And I'm going to come back to, what you've said about, what I've read on what you've written about, determined positivity. So I want to come back to that later. But what you're saying is
Okay.
true, like what I can infer is that resilience is actually a habit that you build, right?
Exactly. Yes. It's like anything else. The difficult part is finding a way to build that habit, or to recognize that, so we don't always celebrate the things that we feel are less than successful. But, we celebrate our accomplishments and our successes and our wins, but sometimes we need to just take the time and go, well, that wasn't 100% the way I wanted it turned out, but I'm still here. I learned something from it. I can apply that in what I'm going to try next. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, absolutely. And you know what you said, it's just about getting from one day to the next, one week to the next. That's what it is, really. And
yes,
wonderful. You mentioned something about, building online businesses and being online, teaching yourself coding and HTML. And you also said that, when websites, they tweak their design or make like really small changes, it's very difficult for you in terms of accessibility. Could you, talk about that a little bit, explain
sure,
that a bit
sure.
for, yeah,
Right,
people who are listening.
right. So like for example, if wherever you live, I'm sure you have a routine as far as how you would get to and from your house to and from work, or to a favorite restaurant, or to a favorite theater. So just imagine if you got up tomorrow and the roads weren't where they were yesterday, or the signs aren't where they were yesterday, or maybe the signs are in different languages or in different fonts, or the words say different things that maybe you don't quite comprehend, but they mean the same things as they meant yesterday. So when in the online world, when you use adaptive technology, it takes somebody like me, whether you use a screen reader like I do, or screen magnification like some people with vision loss but more vision than I have, or use mechanical switch devices for people who are missing limbs or paraplegic, quadriplegic, etc. Um, it takes you longer to navigate a website or an app, and you have to build up a map in your head of where things are on that particular site, or what tools you do have for navigation, what you do with those tools each time you come back to that same website. So if, for example, you go to a website and they have moved an important button from one place on the screen to another part of the screen, or they've changed the text name of the button, or the button still says the same thing, but they've changed it from a text name to graphical characters representing text, or they've replaced it with an image, and the images and all the images just say image. So, for example, I'm not a big user of Twitter anymore. Since it became X, I haven't spent much time on it. I've been focusing more of my time on LinkedIn as an intentional practice for my business. But a few years ago, they moved the new tweet button from, I think it was the top left part of the screen to the bottom right part of the screen. So it wasn't where it was supposed to be, and I couldn't find it. And it wasn't until about halfway through the day before I had the time, or somebody told me that they had relocated it to the bottom right of the screen. And once I knew where it was, then I could tell my screen reader to look for the text that says tweet text and then route my cursor to that part of the screen, and it would find it. But that was a very small change that caused a lot of problems. One of the websites that I used to use for finding podcast uh, hosts to reach out to, for the longest time, their URL structure used dashes, and then all of a sudden they decided to change their URL structure to underlines. Well, I had saved some of my searches and some of my favorite pages within that web page in my bookmark section, so I could go back to them. Well, now I couldn't go back to them. Now I couldn't enter those URLs from memory if I wanted to. I had to go back to the homepage and start all over, uh, re remapping their website so I could find my way back to the pages on the site that I wanted to use. So those are the kind of things that happen. And sometimes you'll use a site and they'll change text to graphic text. And for somebody who can see it, it doesn't look like anything's changed. But my screen reader only can deal with graphics if somebody goes in and adds what's called the alternative text uh, description, so that my computer knows it's there and knows what it is. But these are really small things. So just imagine what would happen if somebody decided that they were going to totally redesign the site, add a new menu with menu items that had never been there before, or add a bunch of pages, or delete a bunch of pages, or change the way that you navigate the website, because not all websites are built to be navigated with keyboards. Some of them don't even care if you have a keyboard. They expect you to have newer computers where you can use swipes and hovers and rotors even from a laptop or a desktop computer. So uh, when people update a website, most people don't consider adaptive technology or accessibility in general, but those who do quite often don't think about, well, what's going to happen when I post this latest update? And so I tell people, when you're considering updating a website, whether you have people with disabilities using your products or services or not, you really should send out an announcement either through your mailing list or your social media feeds, and say are considering or planning on making the following updates to our website. We don't expect that they will affect anybody, even people who depend on accessibility, but we want you to know what's going to happen. And then after it happens, the best case would be to follow up with their community and see if anybody had any issues with it, as opposed to waiting until somebody gets frustrated or angry enough to contact them through their customer service or technical support teams. That's what really should be done when it comes to maintaining accessibility, because most people just don't realize how fragile accessibility is, how little it can take to ruin the day of somebody who depends on a screen reader or a screen magnifier. And right now, the estimates say about 5% of the web is totally accessible. And of course, I don't necessarily believe that anybody gets to 100% accessibility. That's, I guess, a number they use to talk about the subject. But it of those of the 5% that is accessible, I'm sure that there's probably 20 or 30% of that group that at least some of the time is not accessible due to updates.
Yeah, when you're telling me,
And
I'm just imagining what a minefield it is to navigate. I get frustrated. So even for sighted people, it is difficult, when there's a small design change. Even if it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Netflix or anything, you're like, oh my God, why did they have to change it? But I can imagine like for anybody else, who's got any challenges with
yeah,
their site. Yeah.
yes, yeah, and that's a very good point, because especially when it comes to people using mobile devices, a lot of the stuff that frustrates people with vision loss or other disabilities also frustrates your able-bodied consumers. And one of the points that I make, and I feel like our community doesn't do a good enough job at this, which is that accessibility, or when you improve accessibility, you almost always will improve the overall user experience of everyone else that buys your product or service. And I feel like our community does a good job of emphasizing compliance, the possible penalties if you fail to make your stuff accessible. But compliance and fear only gets you so far, and a lot of people will still ignore it. But when we help business owners to understand that accessibility improves the overall user experience, is respected by the search engines and AI, so can generate more organic traffic, and gives you a shot at this huge, mostly untapped market of loyal consumers, we can emphasize the positive reasons behind improving accessibility more. I feel like then we're going to get more businesses that will adopt it and will not just meet the web content accessibility guidelines or WCAG minimums, but they'll go beyond that to the full user experience and going from accessibility to usability or enjoyability for everybody of all abilities.
Absolutely. The enjoyability is key. But tell me, I'm curious to know the conversations that you have with business owners, website managers, or product designers, etc. When you're talking about accessibility, what is the change that you've been managed to effect, and how does, some conversations that you've had?
Right. Well, the first thing is I generally like to start the conversation before I need to have a conversation, because quite often a business owner is only going to hear from somebody like me when we're having a problem with their software or their website. So I believe one of the best things we can do is to approach the subject with a positive, non-threatening attitude towards the business owner, and have empathy for the fact that they have so many challenges on their plates already, that addressing accessibility is just one more thing they have to figure out in their daily lives or within their corporate structure if they're a big company. So have some understanding that this is difficult for them both to comprehend and to implement. So I start by being non-threatening. I will reach out and I will say that I'm a visually impaired person. I use this particular software. I'm about to try to use your product or service through your website or your app. I don't anticipate any problems, but if I have them, I, didn't want the first time you heard from me to be with a complaint. And then if I do have problems, I reach out to these people and I don't insist that they fix it right away or that they fix it with the solution that I would personally prefer. I find that the best way to get improvements is to explain the problem and offer some solutions and be willing to listen to their solution. And sometimes a short-term workaround will allow for conversation to come up with a better long-term fix. And another thing I'm big on is I, at least to me, accessibility should be about accomplishing the purpose of a website or an app. So to me, accessibility could mean they they improve it so that I can do everything by myself without assistance. It could mean that they improve it where some things I do with the help of somebody from customer service. And it could be that in some very rare cases, that the only way to accomplish the purpose of doing business with them is to allow them to do certain functions for me. And so the best example I have of that last category is with images uploads, because everybody, there are so many social media networks, and even beyond networks, there are so many websites where when you create a profile or use them, they want you to give them an image. And uploading an image and having it look like it's supposed to on screen when you can't see the process you're going through to upload it is one of those things that's very, very difficult to make accessible where the end product will turn out the way you want it to turn out. So I love it when I click on a website and it asks me to upload a photo, and then off to the side it'll say, if you have any problems at all uploading a photo, or if you have issues around accessibility, or you need some sort of accommodation in submitting the images or other media we need, just send an email to this address and we will help you take care of it. So they're done for you, done with you, do it yourself. Different levels of accessibility, I believe, is important because accessibility really needs to be a process when the business owner, the sole proprietor, when they have this idea that they have to figure this new thing out, they have to do it today, they have to get completely up to speed overnight, and they have to do it the way other people are telling them to do it rather than the way that their own creative problem solving would say would accomplish the same purpose. These are things that cause the frustration and the anger among business owners. So, talking about different ways accessibility can be accomplished, talking about it as if it's a process rather than a perfection that has to be achieved overnight. Just showing empathy for all the challenges in the life of a business owner and being willing to work with them as long as they, on the other side, are showing a sincere interest and are willing to put in regular effort to make their products, services, and content more accessible over time.
Absolutely. As you've said before in your posts, etc., communication is key, you know. But tell me, you're very active, as you said, on LinkedIn and also Instagram, as I see. Any suggestions for these platforms and any good points that you see in terms of accessibility?
Right. Well, I would say that they have all figured out that images need to come with the alternative text, and when people upload photos, they can definitely now add the alternative text. They've figured out that videos and audios need to have transcripts and closed captions, and they've added ways you can add that. But the one thing most of the social networks could do that would really help would be to prompt people more clearly so that the busy person who's uploading those photos and videos doesn't have to remind themselves that they have to add this information. If you add a photo to Instagram or to LinkedIn or, to any of the content management systems like WordPress, it is going to prompt you, but sometimes those prompts aren't really all that clear. And sometimes the prompts can be turned off, and sometimes the prompts just don't trigger. So basically, anything that would remind users to add those things will be very helpful. I think that there's a future with using artificial intelligence uh, to help content creators add the alternative text descriptions and the closed captions is positive, but at least for the time being, people can't depend on AI to do that for them or on AI to describe things for the person using the screen reader. But that's something. Another thing that I've been told that the Adobe is working on, and some of the other people are working on. If they ever fix this, this would be a real game changer for images and video. Is right now when you create an alt text description that basically tells screen readers and search engines what the image is, that description doesn't travel. You have to create that description or copy and paste that description every place that you post that photo. Same goes for a transcript or closed captions. You have to add that every place you put that video. They're working on technology that would allow you to add the alternative text to the media itself and then have that travel across social media or websites so that wherever the image or video goes, that text would go with it. So not having to create or copy and paste that text multiple times would really be a big help for most people. Or if the business or if the companies could use AI to start extracting the text from people's images on the social media platforms, because then again, people could just do it once on their computer or wherever they save their files to. That would be a big changer because as we both know, there's just I mean, I'm on 5 social media networks and I basically resist a lot of them just out of lack of time, effort, and fatigue. So, uh, given all the many networks that people out there who really work at being influencers are involved in, if there was some way to have the text stay with the images or video, or to have the websites grab that information from your files directly, both of those would be a big game changer for people with disabilities, in my opinion. And just one last thought about Instagram, and this is research I recently came across as part of an article I wrote. The company I wrote the article for did some research and sent this to me. Apparently, for people under the age of 40, 37% of those people will not watch a video if it doesn't have closed captions. And this was a survey done among people who don't have hearing impairment. And the answer is obvious. These are people watching videos at work or in school or on transit or places where they don't want everybody else hearing the audio, but they still want to be able to enjoy the videos. But think about it, 37% of your potential audience won't watch your video on Instagram or Facebook if it doesn't have closed captions. So it's another example where improving accessibility improves your opportunities for all the other users you deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. Everybody prefers closed captions now because you can watch it in a private space without audio. And
Yep.
tell me, what about you mentioned AI? So has AI, changed things for you as it has for everybody really in this world today? Chat
Yeah,
GPT,
yeah,
other stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. AI is one of those mixed bags because on the one hand, people with disabilities are not naturally concerned that AI is going to cause them to lose some of the jobs that are capable of doing, and that the rest of the world accepts that we are capable of doing. And when you're in a community that has an unemployment rate of 70 to 75%, the idea that something might come along and take away work is very scary, even more so than to the general population, because I don't know what the unemployment rate is where you live, but here in the U.S. it's about 4.5%. You know, 4.5% compared to 70 or 75%. So we're naturally more concerned about AI. I personally believe that the things it makes easier over time are going to outweigh the things that it compromises over time. I don't believe that, at least in the U.S. and other westernized countries, I don't believe that people with disabilities are going to end up back in institutions or begging on street corners, or you know, forced to go back to jobs like tuning pianos for blind people, as an example. But there are some jobs such, having to do with inputting data, some of the more routine computer-based jobs that are eventually going to be replaced or require less total bodies to do those jobs because of AI. But on the other side, there are things where AI can help. AI can help somewhat with image description. AI can help us with completing forms. There are some cases, other cases where AI can help us with information. I am not I'm not a spokesperson for JCPenney, but in the last few months I've been using their website because I had a payment processing issue with the website for larger size men's clothes I was using. They caused me to stop using them. So the first time I used JCPenney's website, I was buying some dress slacks for a speaking appearance, and I put them in my cart, and it says you should be advised. There's a pop-up, and the pop-up was coded to where it actually announced it to my screen reader instead of just putting it on the screen and me having to figure out what was there that was causing the thing to make the noise that there was. So it said that this particular brand runs small. You should consider ordering a next size larger. And I did that, and I was very happy with the pants because nobody wants to be at a professional event and have tight clothes. So it worked out really good. And then the same website, when I went to checkout, instead of me having to use a third-party widget or search for coupons, I went to check out. It said, "Are you aware that this coupon is available for almost half off of what you're fixing to buy?" And of course, I didn't know, so it said all you have to do is click the button to accept this, and we'll adjust your cart. So, those are two occasions right quick where I very, very well benefited from somebody using AI. I wish people would use AI for size charts and for color descriptions because quite often I go to websites and I run across these weird, funky color names that I have no idea what the heck they are. Because as I like to tell people, when I could see and color, there were only 24 crayons in my box of Crayolas. So there's a lot of colors out there. I don't know what the heck they are. I wish people would use AI to add descriptions for those. And so I feel like there's some things AI will be able to do, and there's some really encouraging research on how AI is being used by the search engines and how accessibility is becoming more and more important to creating organic traffic. And basically, when you think about generative AI, which is what we have right now, you're having a conversation with the bots. So basically, when the bots crawl a website, the bots are having a conversation with the website. The bots only know what the website tells them about itself. So accessibility is a way where a website can tell the bot a lot more about itself than if you don't. So like every time you add a heading, you're giving the bot information as to what's on that section of the screen. Whenever you add the alternative text for an image or a transcript, you're telling the bot what else is on that screen. When you give it detailed labels for buttons and links, you're telling when you create text that is written in a in what's called a medium level of reading level, you're helping the bots get to know who your website is and who you are. So accessibility is becoming more and more important to the search engines. And the one thing I learned is when business owners find out that something either can make them money or cost them money, they're more likely to pay attention to it, even if they only do it at a low level. So I find that it's important that AI and the improving search engine algorithms are giving more and more credit to accessibility. and that websites that ignore accessibility best practices are not going to compete as well against their competition in the search engines if they don't embrace accessibility. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm actually going to post an episode for my podcast, The Accessibility Advantage, later today, where I interviewed Jason Barnard, who's an expert on AI and search engines, and he was very clear just how critical building accessibility is going to be to maintaining your place or building a new place with and in the world of the search engines and the AI bots that people are using to find information in businesses to purchase from nowadays.
Wonderful. I'm glad that the conversation is growing and, thanks to AI, things are becoming a little easier. I hope it gets, better with time.
Yeah,
So tell me,
yeah,
you mentioned your podcast, The Accessibility Advantage. You have another called What's Your Excuse? So could you talk about your podcast, what they're about?
right. So, what's your excuse is the one I've had for a while. I'm currently looking for guests so that I can restart it. For a while, I was the paid host of another podcast called Hearsay Shorts from a company called Audio Eye, which I still write for their blog and do other content for them, but I'm not hosting their podcast anymore. So I paused What's Your Excuse while I was working for them on their podcast, and now I'm looking for some new guests so I can restart it. I interview people who have overcome adversity in their lives or who continue to live through difficult circumstances, and it's more about how they manage to do it than what they manage to do. I feel there are a lot of inspirational shows out there that focus too much on the horrible events or too much on the amazing person they are now. I feel like those are great parts of the story, but the important part is what can you teach my listeners today that will help them do what you've done? So I try to focus in on actionable tools and techniques. And then the Accessibility Advantage is a relatively new podcast. I still haven't made it to 10 episodes, I think I'll be at 8 or 9 as of today. And on there I'm looking to advocate for accessibility by showing people that it's in their best interest, and I'm going to have several different kinds of content. I'm doing interviews with people who have embraced accessibility to their benefit. I'm going to be doing interviews with people who have a business and are curious about how would they implement accessibility, where would they start. I would actually love to do some conversations with people that are before and after, where people can see them learn about accessibility and implement it in their business and then receive the benefits of improving accessibility. I'm going to do some short tutorials on single subjects that many people still don't know about, such as keyboard navigation first, or how images aren't just alt text. That how you use emoticon stickers and GIFs can also affect accessibility. And I plan on doing some case studies of clients that hire me to improve accessibility to their websites. So basically, a variety of content that makes the case that accessibility is in everyone's best interest.
Yeah, it's great that you're leading the conversation. I've heard your song as well on Instagram that you posted, a couple of them on What's Your Excuse? Good
Yep,
fun.
I have, yeah, I finally faced my fear of singing in public, and I've written 3 songs. If you don't ask, what's your excuse? And my latest one, Don't Wait on Someday.
Would you like to hum
And
it for us? Are you in the mood?
no, yeah, I can sing.
Okay,
You know,
please.
yeah, as I tell people, don't ever ask somebody who sings if they want to sing, because the answer will never be no.
Okay,
You
we're
know,
waiting then. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if you don't have any other questions you would like me to address, I'd be happy to finish with by
Okay,
singing a little
great. So
for you.
there's just one more question. You've talked
Sure,
about determined positivity. So finally, I would like you to explain that.
sure. So, uh, over time, I've learned that when things have been hard, one of the best things I can do is to try to find something good that could come from it. And some days that requires sitting down and making a physical list of things that you can be grateful for. Some people will say it's a gratitude exercise. Me, I'm trying to find something positive that happened, whether it was a person I met, something I learned, an event that happened that wasn't related to what I was trying to do at the time. And what I've learned over time that is that positivity, joy, happiness, these are things that one we can decide to be in that state or not be in that state. But just like anything else that's lost, we can look for it. So, how do you find things that are missing? The first thing you do is you decide that they are there somewhere. And once you've decided that something is in a particular location, then you can just keep looking for it until you find it. And I like to say the best example of this is a television remote. You know, the TV remote can't be outside. It has to be somewhere in the house or the apartment. And you just keep looking until you find it. If you can't find it on your own, then maybe you invite the family members to come help you look. And sometimes by the time you find the remote, your show may be over or the couch the living room may need to be cleaned up again, but that's how you find it. You decide it's there and you keep looking. And so by deciding and doing this as a regular practice, then when you have a really bad setback, you have that process built in, and you know, if you've been doing it long enough, you won't even have to think about it, or you won't think about it for very long before you transition from grief to, okay, how do I move forward from this? And I'm not telling people to avoid grieving. Sometimes we do have to allow things to work through our systems before even a practice of positivity can help you. But I would say start by every day, either at the beginning or the end of the day, think of one thing that occurred during that day that you can be thankful for, that's positive, happy, joyful, whatever words you want to use for it, and then work up to three things a day and five things a day. And then once this becomes a regular part of your day, then, you know, when something minor bad happens, it won't affect your mood as much as it would have before. And when something really bad happens, then, you know, you're more prepared to recover from it more quickly. We still have to go through the stages. We still have to grieve and in some cases, depending on how bad the event was, we may have to have some depression. We may even have to have some professional therapy. But in a lot of cases, we can get back to who we were before more quickly because we have built up this practice of seeking out the positive, and we've built up this mental or emotional muscle in this area. And you know, I one of my favorite examples is back when my primary job was helping people sell their used amusement park or carnival equipment. I had made a sale of a double decker carousel that had been in storage for a decade. It was sold within 30 minutes using my LinkedIn community. The owner was in New Jersey. The buyer was in Australia. The ride was seen, purchased, moved, and reinstalled in under 60 days, which is would be like snapping your fingers compared to most anything else you would buy in the course of your life. And then the guy decided not to pay me, and I chased him on the phone and on the net for a while before finally accepting he wasn't going to pay me. And then once he did, I was like, man, this is horrible because he owed me $25,000. We had been looking at cars, you know. So for a few days, it was very hard to deal with that setback. But then I started thinking, okay, what are the positives here? Well, first thing was when I announced I made the sale, the traffic to my website went up 500%. People started emailing me asking me if I could find them a particular piece of equipment they had been looking for, or if I thought there was a chance I could sell their piece of junk that had been sitting in their barn for 20 years. Uh, I was recognized by the Mutual of Omaha website as having an aha moment in the business, and they gave me $100 cash reward that I used to buy first new clothes I had bought in a long time. You know, there there were many good things that happened. Plus, the fact that I could had built a community where I could sell a ride of that size and value in such a short period of time validated my model. So other and of course I decided that from then on I actually had to have a contract, not just a handshake or an email. So well, it was a very bad moment. It took a few days to get over once I accepted that I was not going to get paid, but I had this practice of finding positive things, and that helped me move on more quickly than I would have without it.
I love that, because if it is there, that's what you're saying. You just have to find it. The positive is there. That's wonderful
Mhm.
and great story.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's there. It's always there. It's sometimes harder to find it. Sometimes you need help to find it. Sometimes having those friends, either online or in person, who will help you find it is really critical to finding it. And some days, you just like, okay, I've looked and I ain't found it. I'm going to have to try again this afternoon or tomorrow and see if I can find it.
Yeah, it's a process.
But
And it's a
it is a problem.
commitment, I'd say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and just like anything else we do, I say this quite often of coaches and gurus that one of the biggest thing I think one of the most destructive things they do is failing to make it clear that any of the practices they teach will take time to build up in your system before they will be successful for you. Because you can take anything you want. You can do vision board, you can do gratitude, you can do immersion, um you can do positive affirmations. There's so many different tools out there, but none of them will work the first day or the 10th day or the 30th day. Some of them are only going to work for you or only going to be there when you need them to work for you if you have practiced them on a regular basis. So I have practiced my positive, finding the positive, finding solutions, asking for help. I've practiced these things at this point in my life. I'm really good at them, but there are still some days, especially in the positive, where I may have to get a little help to find the positive right that minute.
Absolutely. It's always good to ask for a little help. So,
Yeah.
Maxwell,
What's
now I think it's time for the song. Are you ready?
Sure, sure. So this, yeah, yeah, okay. So this is a song I just recently finished. Well, it feels recently. So this is about just going ahead and doing what we can now, because I've talked and written about not waiting on the mythical day we call someday. So I had this song in my heart and thought it could be great. That put more pressure on me, making me want to wait. Then I took some good advice and sang it anyway. This song couldn't change any lives if I kept saying someday. 'Cause you'll never have enough courage. You'll never have enough time. You'll never have enough money. You'll never have enough spine. Just do it as good as you can and do it better the next time. 'Cause if you're waiting on that someday, you'll be waiting the rest of your life.
Thank you, Maxwell. That was wonderful. Thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you. You're very welcome.